Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life?
So I work in advertising where we produce and shoot commercials for various clients. One of the commercials we were working on required a set that looked like a 1980s Irani hospital. And we're Utah based, so that's something that's really hard to find here. Luckily, our producer tracked down it had been an old nursing home and a mental hospital back in the day, and it was no longer in use. It was really old and kind of grungy looking. It was perfect. We go there, and as soon as I walk through the door, I just feel this bad vibe, like in the pit of my stomach. I just felt gross. It was just this weird energy in that building, and it's kind of funny because our art director walked in the door. Well, this isn't funny, but as soon as he walks in, he just throws up all over the place. And I don't know if he had been sick before, but he was definitely extremely sick in that building. He ended up curling up on an old hospital bed and just throwing up the rest of the day. I actually had to go buy him a bucket because he was so sick. He probably should have gotten the heck out of that place, but I think he was too sick to drive even. I felt so bad. Anyway, on our lunch break, I was talking to our hair and makeup lady, and she knew a little bit more about the building because I went in completely blind, and she was like, yeah, a lot of weird things have been known to happen here, and there's a lot of weird stuff in here. There's supposedly this old electroshock therapy chair in the basement, and I was like, oh, I want to go see the electric chair in the basement. That sounds like a fun adventure, and being naive, and just wanting a thrill, I was like, oh, let's go explore. And we had the whole building locked down for ourselves. There was no one else but our film crew there. So together we just kind of go prancing through the hallways, looking in rooms, and we get to the edge of this really long hallway that's completely covered in a green carpet. And she goes, oh my gosh, this is called the Green Mile. I've heard of this. And I'm like, what's the Green Mile? And she said, it's the hallway where they used to wheel patients out to surgery. And there's a lot of stories about this hallway. And as soon as we're standing there, she all of a sudden just freezes and like looks down into the abyss of the hallway, towards the end. And I follow her gaze, and this door comes open, and this huge figure just glides across the hallway. And it's completely black. It's kind of like distorted, oblong, humanoid, but bulbous. Its head was like kind of bulbous, and it just glides across the carpet, goes into this other door, and that door just slams shut. I'm in complete shock. We are just staring frozen down this hallway, and I'm gonna have to do part two. Sorry, guys. Welcome to part two. So I just got done describing how we were on the edge of this hallway called the Green Mile, me and my friend, and we see this distorted, shadowy figure pass from one side of the hall to the other. I'm just in pure shock. I don't know what to do. My friend grabs my arm and she's like, did you see that? I don't know what to say. And then she shakes me again. She goes, did you see that? And I'm like, yeah. And then she just starts running, and I come to my senses. I'm like, don't leave me. And I just run after her. We run back to our film shoot location, the hallway where we're having luncheon, and we just get there. We're just like completely out of breath. Everybody's like, what happened? We're too creeped out to even talk about it. So after this shoot, I want to do as much research as I can about this place. I look it up, find out that it's been on Ghost Adventures twice. It's considered the most haunted place in Utah. They even do ghost tours there sometimes. And I had no idea going in. So I had this big urge to just like talk to somebody about this. So I found out that the owners of the building were going to be at this local comic convention. So I go there. They're giving this little presentation on this documentary on the old mental hospital. But it's not what you think. It wasn't really ghost related. But after the presentation, I go up to them and I just tell them about my experience, and they look at me like I'm completely normal. The first person who looks at me like I'm completely normal after telling this story. And they're like, oh yeah, you saw one of the shadow people. And I was like, shadow people? And they're just like, yeah, there's all these shadow people that live in that hallway. We don't know what they are, but there's all these nurses who used to work there who would see them on the camera, and they're always in the Green Mile. Sometimes like a nurse would get stuck in the Green Mile because a shadow person would like cut her off or crawl on the ceiling. And for some reason it was like comforting to have that confirmation that I wasn't crazy. but also even more terrifying to have the confirmation that I wasn't crazy, because now I know that what I saw was legitimate. Anyway, I don't think I'd ever go back to that place. Like, you couldn't pay me to go back to that place.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life?
This is a really long story, so I'm going to just highlight some things and skim over a bunch to get to the nitty gritty of the story. So, a friend of mine had a family friend that she called a cousin move in with her and stayed with her for about a year to help her out with her child and things like that. But over the course of a year, the cousin just became like a nuisance. So fast forward to like I said, a year has passed, and my friend calls me up and is like, "Hey, you want to hang out?" I'm like, fine. I end up like doing a bunch of errands and like ripping and running with her like all day. And we end up back at her house at like 9 o'clock. And I'm like, girl, I have to go. And she's like, well, I don't want to be alone. And I'm like, why don't you want to be alone? And she tells me that like a few weeks prior, her cousin in the other room in the middle of the night starts speaking in their native tongue, saying that there's a demon on top of her. Okay. And my friend is so freaked out about what has happened. She grabs her baby and they run and they leave. They don't be like, girl, you okay? No, she just up and left in the middle of the night and went and stayed with her pastor and his family for about a week or so or something like that. The power goes out in the entire neighborhood. I'm like, girl, you and the baby, come on, you come stay with me. We got to get out of here. Other stuff happened, but overall, they ended up spending the night with me. And then I didn't hear much about what was going on with that for a minute. Eventually the pastor comes to me and is like, hey, like, I need your help because my friend has not left his family's home, and he believes like maybe this has been blown up out of proportion, and that maybe if I came along or whatever and we can go back to the house, we could see that the cousin is left, because the cousin doesn't know anybody there. The cousin doesn't have a car, and so we're figuring the cousin is gone. So we drive my cars, me, the pastor, and my friend, and we get to her house. Okay. We get in the house and we all like tiptoeing, like, so saying the cousin's name, like, hey, you here? And the house doesn't look like anybody has touched a thing in like weeks. So we don't think the cousin is still there. And so my friend is like, I'm just gonna get more of my clothes and and I'm gonna, and the pastor like just looks like defeated, like, please, looking at me like, can you help? I don't know how we're supposed to help. And he's telling her to open the bedroom door to see if the cousin is in there. And she's like, I can't do it. And she's trying to pack some more clothes. And he's looking at me and she's like telling the pastor, you open the door. And he's like, I'm a guy, I don't feel comfortable like opening a woman's door. And I'm like, "Mm." Eventually he's begging, looking at me like, can you please help? And I'm like, fine. So they are in the back, in the down the hallway near like an exit door, and they like this peeking over, like, okay. And I'm like saying the cousin's name over and over and over. Eventually I open that door and I shut it like in 2 seconds, and they're like, what did you see? And I'm like, let's get out, let's get to the car, and I won't answer.
Would you rather I give you a story time with my lashes like this or no story time at all? Exactly, so go get your snack. Now, before I tell y'all this story, I just want to let y'all know that I'm doing 12 days of spooky Christmas stories on my YouTube. So if you're not subscribed yet, I don't know what you're doing. And you better be subscribed to my Instagram too if you want your story to be part of the 12 stories. Well, not 12 stories, but 12 days of stories. You get it. So make sure you're following me on Instagram and make sure you're subscribed. Why weren't you anyway? Especially when they're threatening to take this app away. How else are you supposed to listen to my stories? Exactly, yup. All right, you better have your snack now, because I was talking this whole time. You should have been got it. And for this week, let's do no sweets for snack. Like, you can have, like, it doesn't have to be healthy like last week, but it can't be sweets. I'm watching you. Anyway, so there's this girl. Let's call her Eliana. Let's do Ellie for short. Ellie was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and she came here when she was like 13-ish. So she already had the Puerto Rican experience while still learning the American experience. You get what I mean? She moved from Puerto Rico to New York, and she left behind her grandmother, who was like her best friend when she was in Puerto Rico. They still kept in contact, and they spoke and everything like that. They spoke on the phone or on WhatsApp. Fast forward to about 10 years later, she's in the U.S., but her grandma is still back in Puerto Rico. And one day she finds out that her grandmother unfortunately passed away. Now with this news, everybody's obviously devastated. I mean, Ellie loved her grandma. And it was even more sad that Ellie didn't get to see her grandma before, you know, she passed. So obviously her and her family, they have to fly back to Puerto Rico for the funeral. And that's what they did. They flew back, they met with family, they had the funeral, everything was great. And while she was out there, come to find out that her grandma left her a gift, like a gift specifically for her. And that gift was a doll. Apparently her grandmother had this doll her whole life and she wanted Ellie to have it. She even went as far to put a note on the doll that says, "Protect her and she'll protect you." So Ellie finds this super comforting. At least she has something that she know her grandma wanted her to have. So when it was time for her to leave Puerto Rico, she left. She came back to New York and she came back with her gift, her doll. So fast forward to about a month later. Weird things started to go on in Ellie's place. Things like she would always hear whispers, and it seems like it's coming from the doll. But it's driving her crazy because the doll can't be whispering. And sometimes she could have sworn the doll is whispering in Spanish. If it's not Spanish, it's some language that she can't understand. However, she's not going to get rid of that doll. That is a doll that her grandma wanted her to have. So one day, Ellie is having an argument with her boyfriend. And the argument got really heated to the point where the boyfriend was yelling at her. And right in the middle of the argument, he stops and he says, "What the hell was that?" Ellie's mad, so Ellie's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Boyfriend's like, "You didn't hear that? Somebody just told me to shut up. And I know it wasn't you because it sounded like a man's voice." Ellie didn't hear anything, so Ellie's like, "Are you trying to fuck with me right now?" But the boyfriend was being dead ass because he heard that. And Ellie didn't really believe him. And anyways, that got looked over. But it's weird things like that would happen, right? So boom, fast forward. Ellie's at work. Ellie works in the healthcare system. And y'all know how toxic like the healthcare community is. So there's a coworker that she does not like and that doesn't like her. That coworker is sort of like a bully to Ellie. And one day, because of that coworker, Ellie got in trouble for no reason. So Ellie was really bummed about it. She came home and she was on the phone with her friends complaining about it, right? So she sleeps over the situation. She wakes up the next day and she goes to work. Except that coworker wasn't there. So she's thinking that coworker is trying to duck her because of what happened yesterday. But come to find out, that coworker was admitted to a different hospital because that morning the coworker woke up in so much pain and there were scratches all over her. And it was bad to the point where she had to be hospitalized. So boom, Ellie is like, yeah, karma, whatever. I feel bad for her, but like, you're a bully. So she doesn't really think too much of it and she goes home like normal. Except when she went home, that doll was sitting on her bed when that doll was supposed to be on the shelf where she put it. So immediately she's creeped out. She's like, "What the hell? Did somebody come in here?" Like, and when she got closer, she realized the doll had something in its hand. And it was the coworker's wedding ring. She recognized it because she sees the coworker every day. So she's like, "Nah, there's no way." And at that point, the antennas started going up. So she called her other coworkers to try to get some more tea, and come to find out, when the other coworker, the bully, woke up with scratches and stuff, her wedding ring was missing. And at first the doctors thought that somebody had drugged her and robbed her, right? And just like, essayed her. But when they tested her, there were no drugs in her system. Nothing unusual. Please don't hate me. I was banned, okay? I got unbanned yesterday. I was banned for a couple of days and I couldn't even comment. Like, someone went and mass reported like my videos, and so I got banned, and then I submitted an appeal, and then they finally like appealed it yesterday. But fear not, I'm here with part 2, and not only is it part 2, I'm gonna give y'all 3 story times today just so I can apologize. So boom, she finds the wedding ring in the doll's hand. Come to find out, it was the coworkers. At this point, she's worried because this can be used against her. Like, she can go to jail for this. She doesn't really know what to do with the ring. She doesn't want to like give it to the police or give it back to the coworker, because how are you going to explain that my doll did it? And it took her some time because she really had to think about this, because that doll was a very special gift. So it took her some time before she decided to bury the doll and the wedding ring. So ultimately she decides that like, this doll is hurting people because of me. I understand that it's protecting me, but who's going to protect me from the doll? So she's like, I have to do this. I have to. So she goes in her backyard. She digs up a little hole and she buries the doll and the wedding ring in the backyard. She had a moment where she regretted it because that was like the last thing that her grandma left her. But she had already did it, was done is done. And she goes to bed. And as she's sleeping, at exactly 3 a.m., there's a banging on her window. She wakes up, she inspects outside the window and there's nobody there. For a second, she thought she was tweaking until she decided, you know what, I'm going to go use the bathroom and go back to sleep. Maybe I'm just like on edge from everything that happened. And she goes to the bathroom and the doll is right next to the toilet. And as you would guess, yes, she's terrified. Not only because the doll reappeared, but also because she doesn't even know if the doll's mad now because she tried to bury the doll. And so she's very conflicted because she's like, why would my grandma leave me something like this, I understand that it's trying to protect me, but like it's unnecessary. And at this point, she's scared to try and bury it again. So she kept the doll. But with keeping the doll, she also tried to do research. Like she tried to call back home in Puerto Rico to try to get some help. Like, can somebody please help me? She ended up speaking with somebody that told her that if she gets rid of the doll, she can eventually get rid of the doll, but she would just have to go through this whole ritual thing that takes about a couple of months, and that she would have to really be consistent with it. And if she does get rid of it, there's a consequence that might come back from her grandma appointing that doll to her. Also, the process too, like with her going through the process of trying to get rid of the doll, obviously the doll don't want to go. So they told her that things will be happening in your life, like bad things. You may even lose family members again. So ultimately, she had decided to just keep the doll, right? Because she didn't want to go through none of that. Until it kept happening. Like the doll kept trying to get revenge for her even when she didn't want it. So about a year later, she just decided that she was going to move back to Puerto Rico and do it there, do the process there. She did do the process. She said it was very traumatizing. She did ended up losing people in the process, like the person told her. But now, till this day, she just has really bad nightmares about the doll. She barely has regular dreams. Every night is a freaking nightmare. She doesn't have the doll anymore. She did get rid of it. But it did take a huge toll on her. But yeah, that's basically the end of the story. Again, I'm so sorry. So expect 3 more stories today just for you guys, just because I love y'all. Don't forget to go follow me on Instagram in case they do delete this app. And subscribe to my YouTube. I love you guys.
I want to hear your paranormal experience that made you think, oh my gosh, this is for real.
So this isn't the weirdest because I've always lived in West Virginia, and you know how it is in Appalachia and there's like a bunch of weird shit everywhere, but this one specific, I have a picture. I also have a video, but my friend doesn't want me to post it, so I'll just explain. But I moved into this house that I was renting from my friend in like 2018. Nothing crazy ever happened there. Knew the history of the property. It was the original owner who built it and lived in it, and then passed it down to his son, who I think let one other person live there, and that was it, besides me. Anyway, so I used to have friends come over and we'd play video games, board games, you know, D&D, whatever, and we would just hang out. And something weird happened to every single one of them. And I always thought, like, okay, well, weird stuff has always happened to me, and it's never happened in this house, so I think y'all just had a little too much to drink, or you're tripping, or whatever. But anyway, like, I have a video. Like I said, my friend doesn't want me to post it, because it's obviously of her, so I'm not going to. I'll just explain what that is, and then I'll show you this. So, the internet was being stupid. I had to go to work, so I went to work. She came to my house and sat there waiting on the internet company to come out and fix it. So I set up cameras all over my house because somebody kept breaking in. It was my old neighbor. They were like breaking in. Anyway, so she's in the kitchen. She's making something to eat. And, you know, the kitchen is like this big rectangle, okay? The sink is over here, and then there's the cabinets over here, and the doorway, and the fridge, and all that stuff. And straight down, you can see, like, the laundry room, and whatever. So I had the camera sitting up on top of the cabinets, pointing so you could see all of it. And she's just standing there talking on the phone, making something to eat. And you can see this black shadow thing, like, come out of the laundry room. And I thought it was her shadow at first. But then it clearly isn't, because she moves, and the shadow doesn't move. And then you can see it like slowly walk up behind her, and then just like this big blackness, like, and right at that very moment she was like, I'm out, and she screams and she runs out, and she sat outside for like 4 hours until I got home because she wouldn't go back inside, bless her heart. That was the first time ever actually saw something, and I was like, okay, all right, well, that was definitely not just a coincidence. And then I had a camera in my bedroom, and it was pointing out, like, in my bedroom, and then out the hallway there's another room directly across from it, completely empty, nothing in there, spare bedroom. And my motion detector thing kept going off, so I was like, it's got to be the ceiling fan, it's got to be something. So I turned the ceiling fan and everything off. Windows are open, so it's light in there, so it's not just like, you know, night vision or whatever being sketchy. And this is what you see. So it wasn't there in one clip, and then the motion kept getting detected, and it just kept getting like brighter and brighter and brighter. And I don't have the video, but I do have a screenshot of it. This is what was there. Okay, so the light, for one, turned on. The light wasn't on when I left. The light turned on in that video. And then out there, right, let me move my face, right out there, you can see it. Hold on, I'll zoom in. There. Right there. What the fuck is that? That looks like a bitch in a dress to me. I don't know. It looks like a lady in a dress. But this was taken, I think, if I'm not mistaken, like one day after that happened to my friend, and I was like, okay, it's getting kind of sketchy. And then after that, it just continuously kept happening. Like, it was just more and more and more and more. And my other friend, who actually came to stay with me for a little while, he slept in that room, and there'd be some weird shit here and there, but like nothing super duper crazy. But every time, because we actually worked together, but every time we would leave, like, I would watch these cameras. And then my old boss actually used to live right up the road, and she knew the people who lived in this house, and she was like, there's no way. Because she was looking at it, and there were some other pictures too that I had that had caught like weird stuff or whatever. And she was like, that literally looks like the old owner's wife that used to live there. Like, she used to wear dresses like that all the time. It looks just like her. And there would be like movement on these cameras all the freaking time, and it wouldn't even be like a person. It would just be like this. Hold on. Like this. Okay, so I have an arrow pointing at it, but like, you see that big white blob? I thought it was like a reflection off the paper towels somehow, but it wasn't, because it would be like all the time, but you would see like that white type of figure thing just be like, whoop. So yeah. And then we moved. We bought the house we're in now. And luckily, it's not haunted. There's like residual energy, because guess what I did? I bought a house that's like spitting distance from an old family cemetery right in my backyard. Love that. But yeah, a lot of way crazier things have happened. But I thought these are cool because I actually have like some kind of proof, you know?
I want to hear your paranormal experience that made you think, oh my gosh, this is for real.
So I'm just going to start posting all of my creepy ghost stories from like when I was a kid and stuff, even though nobody probably cares. I posted that one yesterday, and I don't know, I was having a conversation yesterday evening about some other creepy stuff, and I remembered something. So one of the actual most bizarre things that has ever happened, and like I still don't know I can't explain it. Like, I literally can't explain it. And I've talked to some of the people as adults that were around when this happened when we were kids, and they're like, I remember. I have no idea. So I grew up a holler in West Virginia, up Cabin Creek, and it was like, if you don't know what a holler is, it's basically like a dirt road, like a country road, right? Think a dirt road. It wasn't a dirt road, but it was basically like a mining town. There was nothing but coal mines and long roads and nothing at the end of it. Like, there was no buses, no cell service, no stores, no nothing. It was just a super long road with houses and coal mines. So I lived about 15, 16 miles up this holler, and, you know, there's literally nothing to do up there at all. So me and, you know, all of my cousins and the other neighborhood kids and stuff that grew up there, we would just go outside and hang out. We would spend a lot of time walking. So there was this old, it's called Giles Crossing, but it was an old railroad track right, that was on a bridge that went across the main road, and it went up into, like, I don't even know, I've never been all the way to the end of it. It went, I think, like 10 miles up into the woods. Anyway, there was nothing over there. There was no houses over there. There was nothing. It was just fields and woods. And we used to go up there and walk and pick blackberries and stuff all the time. So one time we went up there, and there was 5 or 6 of us. We were walking across the tracks. Now, you know what railroad tracks look like, how it has like the wooden beams, you know, and there's like gaps in them. Well, this was a bridge, so there was literally gaps in between the boards, like, you know, big ones. You had to be careful where you stepped. And I remember my youngest cousin got his shoe stuck. He got his foot stuck down in it and couldn't get his foot out, so he had no option but to take the shoe off. So he took it off, and we watched it fall all the way down, like maybe 20, 25 feet into like this real shallow little water spot, because a creek ran through there and it was dried up. But we watched it fall, and we were like, oh my God, we're gonna be in trouble, because we had to walk like, I don't know, 4 miles back home, something like that. And yeah, it wasn't going to happen. Anyway, so we look over the edge, and we're trying to figure out how to get down there, because it's nothing but like a solid drop off from the main road. So here's the main road, and then there's like, you know, it starts the bridge, and it's a solid concrete drop off. And we're like, well, we can't get down there. We can't jump down there. And we look over, and there's one little spot through these really thick weeds that kind of like has a steep dirt hill that goes down into the creek. We were like, okay, somebody's gonna have to go down there. We all can't go down there, because if we all get stuck, then we're all screwed. If at least one of us goes down there, maybe we can, like, you know, maybe they can Indiana Jones their way out of there, or we can pull them out or something. So we're walking across, and we look down, and there's an old man down there carrying like minnow traps. And we holler at him, we're like, hey, can you throw the shoe up so we don't have to come down? And he's like not speaking. He's just looking at us, and we're like, well, you know, maybe he's old and can't hear us or whatever. So one of us went to walk down there, okay? This old man, we saw him walk toward the shoe, but not pick it up, because, you know, we're all over trying to make sure that, you know, my youngest cousin gets down there safely and gets his shoe. So he gets down there, and we're all watching over the corner, which is on the opposite side of where the old man was, and he was like, where did he go? And we're looking around, because keep in mind, it's a creek in the middle of nowhere, and it's completely straight on both sides. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to even walk in this creek that you could disappear, at least not that fast anyway. And obviously he didn't Spider-Man up the concrete wall, so we were like, I don't know, it was weird. And he gets down there, and he's like, where the F is my shoe? My shoe was in here. And the creek was dried up, so there was only like this much water. It didn't flow nowhere. It didn't float away. Nothing happened. It was just gone. And me and my older cousin jumped down there and helped, and we looked for like 10 minutes. We walked all the way up and all the way back down, you know, where the water was. There was no damn shoe. So we're like, well, I guess, you know, we'll be in trouble when we go home. Let's just go. We climb our way out of there, and as we're walking back across the tracks, which, keep in mind, this bridge of tracks is like, I don't know, maybe 150 foot long or more. I mean, it's a long, scary bridge to walk across. But anyway, we get right to the other side of it, and his shoe is sitting like almost exactly where it fell through. And we were like, what the hell, you know, how did this get up here? And we were asking, you know, a couple of the other kids that stayed up there, we were like, why didn't you tell us that the old man carried it back up here? And he was like, nobody was here. Like, nobody walked across this bridge. I've been standing here this whole time. There was nobody here. And I don't know. Still don't know how it happened. Still have no idea how that happened. But fast forward a little bit. Fast forward. We were walking again, but in a different part. Not even near that. We were like 2 miles away from that, probably. And we're just walking beside of the creek, and we look over, and there's a shoe. And I was like, that literally looks like your shoe. And he goes and picks it up, and it's his fucking shoe. Because, okay, our parents used to write our initials on the tongues of our shoes. It was his shoe. I was like, well, what shoe did you have on? And he was like, I don't know. So we run back to his house, and he looks, and the other shoe is gone. It's gone. Like, I don't know if it was a glitch in the Matrix or something, or if that ghost just like didn't want us to get in trouble and have to walk back with one shoe. I don't know, but it was the weirdest freaking thing that's ever happened. I know that one's not really so much of a ghost story, but it's just weird, and we can't explain the old man, so I mean, I guess it was a ghost, maybe? No clue. But, I don't know. I think I'm gonna start posting more of these weird stories, because I've got a lot of them.
I want to hear your paranormal experience that made you think, oh my gosh, this is for real.
Okay, so if I'm gonna be honest, I have been witnessing, paranormal activity, hearing my name, seeing spirits, seeing things falling, hearing things since I was like 5 years old. So, yeah. So, two stories that actually stood out the most to me that made me think, oh my god, like, I knew I wasn't tripping. I'm gonna tell two different ones, which is when my step uncle passed and when my step grandmother passed. Now, how my step uncle passed away it was March 3rd, 2018, 2 days before his birthday, a month before my birthday. And how he passed was he had a blood clot in his right leg. My step aunt stood him up, took him to the room, tried to put his shorts and stuff on. He took his last breath, fell back on the bed, went to the hospital, and so forth. That's how, he ended up passing. So fast forward, I'm a junior. I was a junior that year. I was in 11th grade, and my step aunt was staying with my grandmother. She had all of us stay with her at my step grandmother's house, which is her sister. So fast forward, one day we was at the house. She decided, hey, she felt better, so we were going to go back to the house, and because she had mourned and grieved in the way that she felt she needed to, so she was like, she's going to try to stay alone and go back home. Now, when we get back to the house, she had her daughter follow her. We opened up the door, you could smell his cologne in the air, and I'm like, that's weird, because it's been a few months since he passed. Why am I smelling his cologne in the air? Nobody's been here. Nobody has his cologne or anything like that. Just my step aunt. She had kept all his stuff, in the room, left it where it was. So, one night we were in the living room. This is when I slept in the living room because I decided I didn't want to go back in my room, and I didn't want to go, I didn't want to go back to sleep in my room. Because it just felt weird. And I got up, went in the living room, turned on the TV. I started sleeping in there. That night, I had a dream. Remember, I had this dream where at first you seen like something white, like coming at you, and then I seen my step uncle coming towards me. In the dream, he was wearing all white. He had like white wings. He was trying to tell me everything's okay. He was coming back to visit. Something in the mix of that. And I was like, that's weird. So I was like, that's weird. And I remember the next day we were in the living room. Nobody was in there but me and my little sister. We were talking about him. And as soon as we said his name, the light would flicker. And I was like, oh my god. It was automatic. I knew what was going on. I knew that very second that what I always believed in wasn't fake. So maybe a couple months had passed, right? I remember I was sitting in the living room, and I could hear something. It sounded like somebody was at the door, and I asked my little sister, I was like, can you hear that? And she was like, yeah, it sounded like tapping or something, right? Now, what I was seeing, she couldn't see. So, I remember I was like, So we looked out the front door, and it didn't look like nobody was at the front door. So we went back to the back door. What I saw, my little sister did not see. And I turned on the porch light, and my step uncle was outside, standing beside the lawnmower. He wore a white shirt. He had blue pants. Standing there looking at me, waved. And I was like, oh my fucking god. I think that was the first time I had realized all the signs and stuff he was sending me all the dreams he was sending me, that's when I believed, paranormal was real. It's not a figment of my imagination.
I want to hear your paranormal experience that made you think, oh my gosh, this is for real.
So this is part 2. This is about how my step-grandmother passed away and the events during months and stuff after her passing. So the first time my grandmother had called, out of, I guess, maybe a few years or something like that, when it came to me, because, I had a bad relationship with my step family. So, was about the fact that she wanted to see how we were doing. She was waiting on us to come back down to visit. Now, the same day was September 4th, 2020. My mother had received that phone call from her. And then when my mom hung up, they were done talking, she hung up. She came to me. She was like, hey, Nanny sounds weird. And I was like, what do you mean sounds weird? She was like, Nanny sound like her words are slurred. Like, how when people are drugged up and their words are slurring, that's how my grandmother sounded. So I was like, I don't know. That's when my intuition was starting to kick in, and I was having this feeling every time I have a feeling somebody's going to die, that this is, events leading up to it. So September 5th, 2020, the next day, I had woke up. I had a dream. I remember I had a dream that something was going to happen to Nanny. And I woke up and I stayed up. I probably stayed up that whole night till like 4 in the morning maybe. I had told Mom and stuff already that I have this weird funny feeling that something was going to happen to Nanny and that maybe we should call her back. And she was like, Nanny's going to be fine. So the next day, September 6th, 2020, I was watching Sam and Kobe, and that gut feeling came back that something just happened, and I didn't know how to handle it. And all of a sudden I got a message. This message was from her niece, which is my step-aunt's daughter, and she was like, hey, we're gonna take Nanny to the hospital because she was asleep and she didn't wake up. Now, remind you too, she was already hurting before then, smiling but also unhappy because she couldn't see her 2 granddaughters because of whatever their mama had going on. So fast forward, they went to the hospital. I got the text around 7 something saying she passed away, and we went down there. So I stayed down there from September to December 25th maybe. So I went down there. I was in my grandmother's house because everybody stayed at my grandmother's house, which was me, my step-aunt, her nephew, my little sister, and her other sister, which is her nephew's mother. So later that night, we all went to bed. My little sister, everybody else was asleep. I was the only one awake. I was trying to go to sleep, but I just couldn't. I just had this weird feeling like somebody was watching me, and I could not comprehend. So I looked over to my right. And by the way, my grandmother has like 3 couches. She's got one that's beside the door, the one that she usually sits in because she was handicapped. So that was a chair that would help her actually stand up and get out, was her reclining chair. She had one in front of the TV, and she had one by the wall in front of her recliner. So that night, I looked over to my right, and it was, she got this door that my step-uncle used to sleep in this room she called the den. So I remember I was sitting on the couch. I looked over to my right, the door of the den, which is where my uncle used to sleep at when he was living. The door would be like this, and it kind of closed a little bit. And I was like, that's weird, because the door don't ever do that. And, because it's really, the door is like stiff. I don't know how the best way to describe it, but it's stiff, and it needs E40 on it for it to actually be loose enough to do something like that. I thought it was weird because that door don't ever move, so I was like, I gotta be tripping. And then, I was trying to go back to sleep, and when I laid my head on the couch, I can hear somebody whisper. It was like a whisper in my ear. I got up, I looked around, nobody was up. So maybe like 2-3 weeks later, something like that. You know, that I remember I put two and two together because they say that you get signs when the spirit has not passed yet because of the black crows that sit outside the door. Remind you, when my grandmother passed in her sleep, she was in her room. So her room is across from the bathroom. They're like this. So the birds were standing outside of the bathroom door. So like it's been 3 weeks. She hasn't, left, obviously. So it's like, what was she here for? I feel like too, she might have been waiting on us too because she wanted us to visit. So I want to say that next day, it was a Friday or Saturday, my little sister went to get her hair done. So my step-aunt went to take her, and that night, I was washing clothes. I had the Glow Twins on the TV, Paris and Pierre. I had them on the TV. So my grandmother had a walker, right? And that's the noise I can hear. I can hear her walker and her feet. Her feet made this sound because she barely could walk, so her feet make that sound. So I called out. I was like, "Nanny, is that you?" And then all of a sudden it stopped. And mind you, like, her washer is literally in front of her bedroom. Like, you walk in, this is the kitchen. You look in one part of this direction. This is the hallway where the room and the bathroom is that she slept at. So all of a sudden you can hear it and it stopped. That's when I went outside and I got weirded out. So I went outside and I stayed outside until my step-aunt came back. So I was trying to tell my step-aunt about it. And I was like, some weird stuff is going on. I went into detail everything that was happening. She was like, "Oh, that's not true. You're just imagining things." She was like, "The dead knows nothing at all." Because she was one of those Jehovah's Witnesses type of people. So it was like, I knew what I was saying was true. Which I knew she had to believe me because she was so scared she gave me her ashes to put in her bedroom because I was telling her that I was hearing the noises from her bedroom. So fast forward, I was telling the only person that in my opinion, that kind of believed what I was saying was my step-aunt's daughter, the second one. She got 2 daughters, so her second born was the one who was listening to what I was saying. She was like, she believed me because she said she was looking outside of her window, or she was outside, and she could see my grandmother's spirit in her van waving at her. So I was like, well, at least somebody, I felt like at least somebody believed me. So if I remember, this was into the next year, right? I was coming back home. I live here in Nashville. I was coming back home. And all of a sudden, I just, out of nowhere, I was thinking of my step-grandmother. It was like I could feel her. And all of a sudden, I broke down. And I was like, I don't know what was going on, right? So we decided, okay, we were going to take a trip back down to my hometown where she passed, and we visited her. So we came back to my hometown. We had visited her grave, right? And, it was like for a minute, everything was okay, right? So fast forward, I think this is when I had spent the night back with my step-aunt. And that night, I remember we were outside, and I'm thinking, I'm seeing something. And I'm like, All of a sudden, I was talking about my grandmother and my uncle. And I could see 2 orbs, and they were sitting in front of my face. So, And that wasn't even the only story, the only thing that ever happened. It was
I want to hear your paranormal experience that made you think, oh my gosh, this is for real.
So I actually have 3 stories. Actually, Four stories. Okay. But my first ever paranormal experience that I remember is when I was about 4 years old in this room. It used to be the toy room. This room used to be the toy room. And the other room was my room. But I was in here playing with my toys, and everything was like a mess. There was toys everywhere, like normal, playroom. There's kids' toys everywhere. And if you guys remember at McDonald's, they used to give you these little, my tongue is purple. Anyway, they used to have these little dolls, like the Wizard of Oz dolls or something like that. But I had the Glinda doll. It was a little bitty doll. I had a pink dress on, this pink like hat thing, and it was in the corner of my room, right by the door. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was right by the door, and there were other toys over there, but that one was on the very top. It was on the top of the pile of toys that was over there. And I remember I was playing with something. I forget what I was playing with. But then I turn and I look, and out the corner of my eye, I could see this little doll. Like, say that this is the doll, right? It's like a little smaller than this, but just say this is a doll. All I see is it do this. Like, it was laying down. All I see is it do this and be picked up about maybe 5 inches off the ground. And then when I full on turned my head towards it, it dropped. Like, the ghost realized that I actually saw it. I ran out of the room, and I went and I sat on the couch. I didn't tell my parents about it, because I knew they wouldn't believe me, because they're not believers of the paranormal. At, the age of 4 or 5, I knew that. I knew that they didn't believe it. But anyway, I went and I sat in the living room, and I never told my parents about it. But there was one time when when I got this bed. I was about 12 when I got this bed. So I've had this bed for a long time. I'm 21. I've had this bed for a long time. I was sleeping on my top bunk. Well, wasn't sleeping. I was sitting on my top bunk. And I had seen out, like, I was playing on my phone. Because my phone was strictly just for home. I couldn't bring it to school. It was a phone like this, but I couldn't take it to school. I had to leave it at home. And so I'm playing on my phone. And mind you, it's like 4 a.m. Like, I had not slept. But I was playing on my phone. And I'm looking down, but I can also see, like, this, like, above my phone. Especially on the top bunk, because I was sitting up and I was like this. So, you can see what's behind your phone. And all I see is something white start to come into the door frame. And I'm like, what is that? And so I look up, and it's just this lady that I have named Lucille. She has given me a dream that I will tell you about. But I had seen her walk by my door. She's in this beautiful, like, long wedding gown. She's got a veil, everything. And she just walked straight past my door. And I'm like, I was like, I don't think that was my mom. So I got down off my top bunk and I went and I looked, because the only door over there is the bathroom door. And I was like, okay. And so I'm looking and nobody is there. Like, she walked past my door and just disappeared. Nobody's there. And then, like, a week later, I was sleeping. And I got an episode, my first and only episode of sleep paralysis. And I ended up seeing the Hat Man in that episode. I was asleep, facing the wall, but I had woken up and I couldn't move my body, but I could still see the door from how I was laying down, because I had my head, like, I was laying like this on my top bunk. I used to do it all the time. I was laying like that. My pillow was over here, but I was kind of like that. And I opened my eyes. I couldn't move. And so I was like, okay, what's going on? I started freaking out. And all I see is this big, like, tall man walk in front of my door frame. That's why I started to leave my door shut. I saw this big, tall man wearing a hat that covered, it looked like it covered his eyes and just kept going. It looked like, from where the door was, it looked like the top of his head was like chopped off and replaced with a hat. That's what it looked like. And he walked in front of my door, and he just stood there. He didn't do anything. He just stood there, just standing there, staring at me. And then this woman that's shorter than him walks in front of him, and she's carrying a baby. And I start freaking out because I don't know what's going on. I can't move. I can't anything. I'm trying to scream, but I can't. And I'm laying there just staring because it's all I can do. And all of a sudden, this baby that was in this lady's arms just jumps out of her arms and darts towards me. And before it can get to me, my brain finally snaps back, and I finally wake up, and I sit up, and I'm sweating, and I'm crying. I'm like drenched. My shirt is all wet. Like, I was sweating, and it scared the shit out of me. And that's why I started keeping my door shut, because since I've had my door shut, I haven't had any episode of sleep paralysis. And then Lucille, the woman in white that I see walking down my hallway, I still see her every once in a while. She gave me a dream. Well, I think she gave me the dream, or I was dream walking or something. Anyway, but I remember being asleep, and I was in this setting. I forget where it is, but then all I see, like, I can't move. It's like my feet are glued to the spot. Like, I'm just a watcher. I'm a viewer, is basically what it felt like. And I'm looking around, and I'm trying to move. I can't move. And I'm outside, and I see this woman walk up, and she's just looking out into the field that was in front of her. And she looked exactly like Lucille, the ghost in the hallway. And she's just staring out into the field. And then all of a sudden, this man walks up, like sneaking. Like, he's like being really, really quiet, trying not to step on anything, like, and he's holding something. And all I hear is this loud bang, and it's just like a flash of white across my eyes. And then the white goes away, and all I see is Lucille on the ground, and she's got like a trickle of like red going down her head. And I was like, what the fuck? And so I look, and it's that guy in the suit, and he's holding a pew pew, like he had shot her. And all I remember is him walking up to her, and just before he walks away and pretends to be distraught, I remember he walks up to her, and he looks down at her, and he says, "Oh, you really didn't think I married you for love, did you? I just married you to get your parents' money." And then he kind of cocked a smile and like walked off and threw what he was holding, away, and started running down to, I guess, the venue, and was screaming and shouting, saying somebody had shot Lucille. And I was like, what the fuck? And then I woke up, and I'm like, what was that? What just happened? I don't understand. I was like, what just happened? But yeah, those were my paranormal experiences.
One night, my little sister, I think she was about 3 or 4 around this time, she was sleeping, she went down for a nap, she ended up waking up, and it was me, my mom, and I think my other sister in the living room. She comes and tells my mom, like, hey, like, Grandpa says he misses you. Mom's like, who are you talking about? She's like, yeah, Grandpa says he misses you and loves you or something like that. We're like, what the heck, who are you talking about? She starts crying. She's like, I miss him. My mom's like, who are you talking about? And she's like, look. And she goes in my mom's room and pulls out a picture of our great grandpa. And it's crazy because I've never met him. My little sister hasn't met him, and like we're a big age difference, so obviously it was years ago that he had passed away. She basically saw him in her dream, or he talked to her somehow, and my mom and all of us were kind of like scared. Kind of like what we concluded was that maybe like he reached out to her in her dream while she was sleeping.